Hello, and welcome to the 2019 CIO Virtual Event, Driving Transformation in the Age of Digital Disruption. My name is Maria Antwort with Argyle Executive Forum, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have a few administrative details to share with you, and then I'll turn things over to our esteemed speakers. First, we'd like to thank Dell Boomi for their partnership with today's event. They've been a wonderful thought leadership partner to Argyle and are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. So thank you again, Dell Boomi. We appreciate you joining us today. We welcome you to stay connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please use the hashtag ArgyleExecForum. You can also follow us on Twitter and be sure to join our LinkedIn group, CIO CISO Forum. I also wanted to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we curated based on the feedback we received over the years from our members. Argyle is very proud and protective of this policy, as it reflects our commitment to ensure the neutrality and overall value of the content presented at our events. We work closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. We have two upcoming CIO leadership forums that may be of interest to you. The first one is October 17 in Chicago. The second is November 6 in Toronto. And a CISO leadership forum, November 13 in New York. And we also have a two-day DataX conference coming up on November 6 to 7 in New York City. Finally, and most importantly, please submit any and all questions that come up during today's event into the Q&A section of the interface. Following the panel discussion, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on these questions. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Miles Sewer, Head of Global Enterprise Marketing, Dell Boomi. We're pleased to have Miles with us to deliver opening remarks. Welcome, Miles. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be with you all today. As was indicated, I head global marketing at global enterprise marketing at Dell Boomi, but I also run the CIO chat on Twitter and share the insights from that regularly in my column in CIO Magazine. So without further ado, let's talk about what we're going to go through today. So I think everybody understands it, but I want to just make it crystal clear. Why does digital transformation matter? What are some of the models that are happening for digital transformation and obstacles? And then I'm going to pick up and share on Jeannie Ross's new book on design for digital and what kinds of mandates that expresses for you as leaders. And again, if you want to read more about that, feel free to go to my column. I have a piece on design for digital that came out a few weeks ago. So, we all know that business is accelerating. Toffler wrote the book Future Shock back in the 70s and 80s, but I think we're really now hitting the pace. And so it's become critical that businesses can respond at the speed of change. And so that means that we have to be ready as leaders of technology companies, as leaders of, and everybody is a technology company according to the World Economic Forum, I'm sorry. We need to be ready when new technology emerges to respond to the mandates of that technology. And, basically, as you look at it, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. It didn't load immediately. Companies need to, as Jeffrey Moore indicates in his book, Zone to Win, need to be ready to catch the next wave. If you're not ready, and having been a surfer and a body surfer before, if you don't hit it just right, you either don't get a ride or you get crushed. And that's what we're seeing happening with companies over and over again in today's environment. And part of it is what Jeffrey Moore calls a crisis of prioritization. We have to be able to figure out which things really matter, and we need to be able to launch them into what he calls the transformation zone. If you don't do that, you don't succeed at business. And, when you look at it, there's a whole bunch of companies who failed to meet the next wave. Several years ago, when I was an industry analyst, I met with the leadership team that John Chin had assembled at Sybase, And I was amazed because he kept using the wave analogy and saying, we're never going to be the world's leader in databases anymore. We have to find some other wave to catch if we're going to succeed. And these are just a list of all the companies who've been hit by technology change in the last few years, according to Jeffrey Moore. So when I talk to CIOs, they tell me all the time that they're hoping that the CEO knows that they can't sit still, that there's a target on their back and it's time to move forward. And the reasons are obvious. The first thing is that digital disruption is affecting the longevity of companies. The year I was born, the average life of a public company was 55 years. A few years ago, it hit 20, and a year ago, it hit 12. So public companies who cannot respond to change are finding themselves in a position where their life is impacted. The other thing is, if you go back and you look at competing on strategy, which Michael Porter wrote, he talked about all of these barriers to entry, but the fact is that technology is becoming like, a hot knife against butter. It just disintegrates what have been historical, traditional barriers to entry. And the fact is that there's always somebody trying to eat your lunch. What's interesting is only 28% of companies are actually have succeeded at digitizing their businesses. So that means 72% of legacy businesses are in trouble as we speak today. And I've asked Jeannie about the numbers, and she says that 51% are living in silos and another 21% are living in duct tape and Band-Aids. And so that creates a real issue for companies trying to survive. And it's not just Jeannie who's talking about it. It's John Chambers at Cisco who's talking about how many businesses will not exist in a meaningful way and how many companies are trying, but only a small portion will succeed. And it's amazing how close their numbers are in terms of those who are succeeding at digitizing their businesses. And then finally, if somebody comes along and they change your business model, it creates what Jeffrey Moore calls a Kodak moment, and your chance of succeeding is really low. In fact, I think he has a number of about 10%. If you don't have the technologies ready to change with the business model change, then you're going to be likely out of business. And we've seen it. I mean, if you look at Amazon and what they've done, it's not just the stores that have been impacted, but in many cases, it's the shopping malls that have been impacted. Or, take a look at Airbnb. The interesting statistic was that when things were loosened up and people could go into Cuba, Airbnb already had several thousand rooms available immediately just by using technology, whereas Marriott and the rest of the organizations out there had to go and actually produce the facilities for people to go to. And one of the things we're seeing is that digital is saying to you, you need to take all your smarts and start to codify that into a digital platform. So here's just a couple of examples. So Weight Watchers has taken all of its smarts and made it possible for you finally to count points without doing any work. And my wife loves this because she just puts in a scan something or does something else, and immediately she knows whether she's gone over or not in terms of the number of points that she should be using. And, Nordstrom has done an amazing job where they've always been about personalized service. So now they look at your purchases, predict what you want, and then basically are able, whether it's a store experience, an online experience, to drive you to the right product. So it's amazing what is happening and how much your knowledge needs to become, and capabilities, to use enterprise architecture language, needs to become digital. And the reason this is so important is that we have three new capabilities that are really impacting businesses today. The fact is that data is everywhere. We have the ability to connect it, and we have massive processing power. And that's requiring businesses to think differently about how they do things. So in the digital age, and this is now starting to come from Jeannie Ross's new book, Enterprise Architecture Matters, and Mastery of Technologies Around Social, Mobile, Analytics, Cloud, and IoT, and she calls this SMAC it. Basically, as you look at it, you have to have expertise there. You also have to have a willingness to experiment and to create new digital value props. And as well as I'll show you in a minute, it also requires you to rethink how you manage your organization. So you need to build an adaptive organization. Legacy businesses are often impacted by people, process, and technologies. CIOs tell me all the time, you got to get the people and process right, but then you have to get the technology right after that's happened. And a sustainable marketing thing comes from being able to increasingly build digital businesses rather than analog businesses. What we're finding increasingly is there's less value to be held in what was a physical product. More of the value is coming out of a digital element or augmentation of the physical product. And, you know, as we started to look at models, Jeannie Ross started to discover that the people who were winning at digital were able to take multiple capabilities and blend them together. And out of that, what they were able to do is to drive, you know, even better customer engagement, exactly what you want, like the Nordstrom example, or digitized solutions. So think of GE here, who's moved from selling jet engines to selling a service that guarantees that the airplane keeps running. They're using all of the streaming data to transform their business model. So both of those models are correct. And I put this in, this is something that's worth a read if you haven't looked at it. What's your digital business model? Stephanie Warner, who's also at MIT, has come up with this model that takes a look at what are the digital challenges based upon the business models that you're trying to pursue. And obviously, different models require different kinds of approaches. So what are we seeing happening in this age of digital? We're reimagining products and services and changing the corporate value proposition. I was amazed, if you haven't seen it, there was a 60 Minutes a few weeks ago for Land of Lakes. Now, Land of Lakes, you know, who would have thought that they were digital? Who would have thought they were a digital business? But it's amazing when you think about that. And so they're rethinking and using digital to transform how they service and manage things. So increasingly what we're seeing is a world where there are digital offerings which are wrapping personalized customer experiences in information technology. So I'm going to go through how that all works quickly now in the thing. Now, obviously, the big conundrum for legacy businesses is how do I put all the things together to move into an agile, innovative digital player? So that's a big challenge for legacy businesses. And so Jeannie Ross talks about her book about 5 things that you need to do. Let me take these quickly for you. So the first thing she does is she contrasts digitization and digital, where digitization is equal to, hey, I'm taking an analog process and I'm making it a digital one. Digital means I'm creating offerings that change my value to customers. And so, and I'm sorry this slide has not come out perfectly in the transformation, but let me walk you through it. So basically, a lot of the things that companies have been working historically, which have been around digitization, is about an operational backbone. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. And that needs to connect to APIs so that you can build digital offerings. So let me walk you through each of these. So the operational backbone, this is the things you should have been doing for the last 10 years. Getting your end-to-end transactions to work, getting reliable master data, fixing the quality of your data, and automating business processes. Now, the problem for legacy businesses is, as we know, many have not even gotten to this point. And this is now table stakes as the competition moves to building a digital platform. So that digital platform is going to focus more on top-line revenue and less on operational efficiencies. And what CIOs tell me all the time is that's their their big focus. So what's a digital platform? Basically, a digital platform is the ability to build, buy, configure, and reconfigure business data and technology. It's taking a componentized view of solving business problems rather than building big monolithic applications, and it's a repository of business data and infrastructure. My favorite example of this is DBS Bank. They took and componentized their ATM application, and now partners come along and built it so that you can go into a convenience store and pull money out of the cash register rather than going to the bank. It's amazing to look at this and just see how fast this is changing everything out there. Now, when I talk to CIOs about this, they're very excited about this move to a digital platform, but the big thing they're worried about is they want these low-code applications to not create additional security vulnerabilities and not create additional tech debt in the process in order to make that all work. And so a well-designed platform uses APIs. It allows you to quickly put together these things. And the most interesting thing, I think, is this ability to create a different kind of organization. Now, here's an interesting quote from Toyota's CEO for Connected Enterprise. Basically, you're building teams that are trying to respond at the speed of the marketplace, and it's changing it. And so one of the things I find really interesting is this move that for the traditional IT organization, which was more command and control, that was the way that you put something together from an accountability perspective. But that's how you build that platform, that operational backbone capability. But as you build out your digital offerings, you're going to flip the organization and move to kind of a top or bottoms up organization where you're building components and you charter these organizations in order to change. Another thing that's interesting as you look at it is that increasingly it's not just you. You have to be able to expose this. So like DBS Bank, for example, the reason that this partner was able to do what they were doing is they were exposing APIs to key elements of their system. They've got a catalog of over 200 APIs that external partners can come along and transform their business. And if you look at it, if you're going to design a digital company, and we're going to get into this with a panel in just a moment, you need to get ready for a competitive landscape, and you need to think more and more about how do I build a business that is going to work in this truly digital environment. And so kind of final remarks I want to share here is that, sorry, I want to give you this one, is that we need to figure out the digital building blocks according to Jeannie. We need to figure out which ones we can build quickly. We need to recognize that the change we're going to invoke on the organization is going to be huge. Imagine, thinking about putting in a major capability, but building it in components so that it's reusable. There's going to be no single roadmap in this process, and we need to develop, these building blocks quickly. So let me summarize. I've gone through a lot here, but the mandate's out there. We need to become increasingly a digital business with digital offerings. And the challenge for all of us in legacy businesses is how do we get there quickly? So with that, we're going to have a really interesting panel discussion now. And what I'd like to do is to move to that right away. And basically, we're going to have three different experts who are working through a lot of this stuff today, who are going to answer a series of questions that are relevant to this, what I've been presenting so far. So we're going to have Shiroshi, who's going to talk, Pedro, and Anthony. And the first thing I'd like to do is let you guys have a chance to introduce yourselves. So if you can go in order, Shreyoshi, can you provide some background on what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon. I'm Tracy Pottery. I lead people research at McGraw-Hill. McGraw-Hill has been a leader in the education sector for over 100 years now, and we are currently revolutionizing learning sciences. So obviously, there's a lot of digital revolution that our company has been spearheading in the education and learning sectors. My role is primarily within culture and talent and people operations. And we heard Miles speaking today about the digital revolution. And of course, within an organization, employees face a lot of digital disruption. So today, my perspectives on this panel will be more from a people perspective, the perspectives of the employees of organizations.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and one of the folks I regularly connect with on LinkedIn and Twitter is writing about how you have to transform yourself before you can transform your organization. So I look forward to that perspective. Pedro?
Thanks, Miles. Good afternoon. This is Pedro Buigas with Basic Energy Services. We fall in the category of legacy businesses. We are an energy and essentially an oil and gas services provider. We literally drive trucks around, transport water, and drill holes in the ground. So we're taking a very old school business and trying to digitize it so that not only are we gaining as much efficiency as possible from our internal processes, but we're able to add value proposition to our customers, primarily around the use of data. So that's, I think we'll go more in depth into that in a little bit.
And Anthony?
Well, I'm Anthony Howell. I'm an enterprise architect at Builders First Source. In my current capacity, I'm responsible for assisting the business and IT with transformation of processes and technology and people. Our organization has historically done construction. We're in the process of handling a lot of acquisitions and trying to help people build new homes and assisting the industry in itself continue to develop regardless of what comes its way.
Cool. So the first question is, how do you see your organization responding to digital disruptions? Are there some specific examples of things that you've been working on that you're worried about, things like that? So let's start with Pedro on this one.
Thanks, Miles. Yes, so we are focusing on two things primarily. It's data, both for our internal consumption and our external publishing to our customers, and also the digitization of our internal business processes. With regards to our internal business processes, we're heavily focused on mobility. So we are trying to extend the data capture / data entry method all the way to the origination point to eliminate paper from our, essentially order to cash process, for example. And then we're collecting data as much as we can from all our systems and IoT devices and creating meaningful insights to our internal customers, which are our business managers, so that they can make better decisions on a day-to-day basis. Like Miles mentioned, a lot of times this means bringing data from different systems through APIs and collating those and make meaningful decisions. And this is like a step into our what we call phase 2, which is automating those business decisions through AI and machine learning. And then on our digitization process, very, very focused on eliminating multiple people touching a business process redundantly. So, trying to capture data at the source, try to capture data one time, and eliminating as many touches as possible from any and all business processes. So that's really how we're our biggest focus on transformation right now.
Yeah, it's going to be different between industries, but I've been amazed at companies who've been trying to use data in your industry to figure out which well to pick today in order, when they're doing fracking and other things like that, which one's going to be economical kind of thing. So it's amazing to watch technology start to filter its way into the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, and a specific example for that.
Yeah, please go.
No, Miles, yeah, so a specific example in our case is picking which truck to dispatch to a specific well site based on driver information. So how long has the driver been driving? What are the contents of the truck with regards to volume of water that it's carrying, location, drive time, and then also disposal wait time. So we're taking all of that data and making meaningful decisions to eliminate cost and increase safety. So yeah, there's a tremendous amount of technology that is being implemented in that industry right now. And also our customers are changing. Our customers are demanding more data from us in order for them to make better decisions about vendor selection. So it's no longer doing the job safely or economically, but it's actually proving that. And that's fairly a recent change in the industry.
Wow, amazing. It's really transforming what you do. So let's go to and hear a little different perspective from a different industry. Can you talk to us, Shreyosi, about what you're doing?
Yes, absolutely. So I think everyone made some really great points, and I think Petty talked about really getting to know data from different systems, using redundancies to make it more insightful or meaningful. I think that has also been one of our prime concerns as an organization. At McGraw-Hill specifically, we've been around, like I said, we've been around for a while now, about 100 years in the education sector. And our motto is learning changes everything. So adding to that perspective, for us, we believe that for really true digital disruption, workforce adaptability is a key skill. So really helping employees learn and adapt to the technologies that are coming in. Like we hear a lot of terms, AI, machine learning, but really using these technologies to help with employee or workforce development is what we believe will really bring about digital disruption. Yeah.
No, those are great examples. There's a company I was hearing recently talk where they were bringing in people to take existing IT professionals and teach them machine learning, things like that. So they made a deal with a community college, and they were retraining people to be, the ability to do modeling and things like that. So I think that kind of thing is going to be critical. How do you make your workforce
Absolutely.
relevant to the jobs of today? Perfect. And Anthony,
absolutely.
Perfect. And Anthony, tell us about what you're seeing.
So in our organization, builders first source being in the construction industry, our founders use the term builders first source sell sticks. And part of that phrasing is that, part of being in construction is we sell lumber, we sell trusses, windows, doors, everything that you possibly need to develop a home. With that said, one of the things that's happened over the last several years is everybody's going to mobile solutions. So what we're adopting is trying to get people their information, their notifications faster, whether it's, how long is it going to take for us to get 50 pallets of brick out here or to get our windows delivered. We also provide the similar service of Amazon, where people wanted to know, where did you leave it? Give us a picture. We're providing some of that legal background so to insulate ourselves from any kind of risk. So that was another avenue that we took part of, because, if you think about risk and usage of equipment, people can say all day, oh, it never got delivered, or I don't see it, or it's never here, someone stole it, reimburse us. Well, part of making this mobile adjustment is making sure that drivers can take pictures of their deliveries, and then it's archived, so that way we have proof of delivery, and that we can send that to the customers out in the field. On top of that, some of the initiatives that the company has taken part of is getting them more access to what they've had historically. A lot of what we've done operationally was all, paper bound. We're going through a lot of different transformations to try to get users to start using a portal so that they can access invoicing, predict scheduling, provide quotes to us even to provide builds. So, there's a lot of mobility changes in trying to get people into their data and give us access to give them data, whether, and getting past the old FTP where we send something and wait for something to come back. We're actually leveraging things as APIs allow and transform our own technology so it responds quicker to whatever technology customers are using, no matter what the application or software is. So there's a lot of that, just essentially making it easier for users to interact with their data and giving them the data lakes necessary.
Yeah, I love what you're doing. It reminds me a little bit of GE. Now that you have all this data, how can you help transform, the people who are building homes and ensure that they're more productive? It lets you sell a bigger value proposition. Would you agree?
Yeah, being able to insulate yourself from risk and ensuring, customers a peace of mind alone helps build stronger relationships. So, you got a lot of different avenues that you're going to see the benefit from.
Agreed. So let's stay with you for a moment. You're an enterprise architect. So what steps can enterprise architects take to help build this future business kind of thing that, I shared from Jeannie Ross?
Well, some of the biggest problems and the obstacles that people in enterprise architecture face is understanding the business processes, and then on top of that, the most important, understanding the strategic initiatives. And a lot of times you'll see organizations where IT is not even invited to the table. So that's a hard obstacle to fight. So one of the, the efforts that we've made is just meeting with managers out in the field, general managers, and identifying gaps in technology or processes that we can, easily fill with the most simplest efforts, whether it's introducing some, microcontrollers here or there, or some simple web forms for them to use for filling out data to present, instead of documentation. Some of the other things that we can do is, provide technology enablement. They want to do more. A business will always want to do something better. And whether they do it with you or without you, it's really up to you and your leadership. So engaging at that level and asking the questions why, really might become an annoyance at first with the business, but eventually you'll drill down to the meat and potatoes of what exactly it is that the business wants in order to transform with their vision in mind. Whether it's we want to be the next Fortune 500 company that can now sell electrical, plus plumbing, not just wood, windows, and doors. It's things like that. But how do we transform there? Well, maybe we need a new ERP system. Well, why? Because our technology doesn't support it. Why? And drilling in deeper. So understanding what your capabilities are, understanding your processes, and understanding where your business wants to go is absolutely critical in order for you to enable digital transformation.
I really like the idea of drilling in deeper and finding gaps and getting closer to the strategic initiatives. Those are so important. Most enterprise architects tell me they're kind of a planning function for the future state. Well, that's how you do it.
Yep, absolutely.
Pedro, what's your perspective? You probably have an enterprise architect or so that you work with. How important is architecture to being future ready?
No, extremely important. And I agree with Anthony on digging in deeper, right? And one of the notes that I wrote down on my notebook as I was preparing for today was not doing technology for technology's sake, right? It's making sure that anything that we do is in support of a strategic objective and a real need. And as we think about enterprise architecture, our goal is to build, best of breed solutions at a reasonable, total cost of ownership. But we focus on agility. We want to focus on making sure that we're building solutions that are agile, that not only solves our needs today, but can adapt as we progress in our life as an organization. We try to minimize technical debt, and in doing so, we kind of shy away from implementing these large scale, monolithic projects, and instead focus heavily on a minimum viable product, with regards to our deliverables. And internally, when we think about enterprise architecture, making sure that we're kind of looking at, are we building something that satisfies our needs today? Can this solution also satisfy our needs, our perceived needs in the future? Is it agile? Are we implementing something that it's already outdated, or it's something that is able to evolve with us? So it's something that if you short circuit it, it may succeed in the short term, but it may end up biting you 2, 3, 4 years on the road because you're stuck.
Absolutely agree on the agility point. That's just so critical. Strategy is going to change. Can you change with it? Shiroshi, how are you looking at this? Obviously technology is increasingly impacting people-related issues. I heard some amazing research a few years ago from Facebook on what they were looking at in terms of predicting needs and things like that, Google as well. So what are you doing there, and how do you work with people to ensure they have an architecture that's supporting you?
Right. Well, first off, I think great points by both Pedro and Anthony, and talking about, agile workforce systems and all of that. One thing, I guess, that I keep hearing is about, how enterprise architects try designing solutions that are future-proof. And I guess really understanding the difference between future-ready and future-proofing, because there really is nothing that is future-proof, since everything is so volatile and dynamic, especially in the digitally disruptive economy that we are in. So at McGraw-Hill, like you brought out, we use a lot of technologies to really understand the people and the ecosystems and the processes, and to really help understand where there may be deficiencies, or where there may be need for extra resources that need to be put in, and to really help about bringing about a more integrated dependencies across business units and business partners, I guess. Hello?
I think we might have lost Miles there for a moment.
I'm sorry. That was me. I muted myself. As you look at, I want to stay with you, and as you look at the building blocks for an integrated set of business applications, do you see this need to have the ability to connect to a larger ecosystem? It's no longer just internal, it's external. What do you think, Shiroshi?
Yes, absolutely. I think the key or fundamental task is to really think about the enterprise's vision and also the external dependencies. So I emphasize a lot on the people and the employees, but then also how the people in the internal ecosystems are being impacted by the market, by the customers, the consumers, all of it. So yes, definitely. I guess one of the important things in really thinking about building blocks for integrating business applications would probably be to really move away from silos and instead look at intersections of the different units. I think that's a great starting point.
Yeah, silos are such a big thing to worry about and fix. So, how about I go to Anthony on this one?
Well, silos are definitely a tripping point for any business. I know that through the major changes that we've made in our own organization, sometimes it's hard for people to understand what one hand is doing and how it impacts the other. And some of that is kind of our own undoing. But as executive leaders and senior leaders in the organization, it is a responsibility to try to bridge that gap. Even in enterprise architecture, we see it all the time, where business processes may not align properly because of political architecture, as we like to call it. So breaking down the walls and literally almost shaking people is the only thing you really can do to get over some of those humps. Some of the things that we've done in order to engage and get people to feel like they're on point and allow them to provide feedback when we're doing things is forcing them into it. Not necessarily making them a full stakeholder of projects, but making sure that they're involved to a point that they're almost a decision maker, and getting them to provide their input. Because it could be simple as bringing in a DBA into a conversation when you're talking to the business about building a website. And then all of a sudden now you realize, oh, well, we have a serious problem. We deploy this over here. Now you're going to have a failure on the back end on this system because now we've added additional overhead. And it's like, you know what? Now we bridged a gap because people feel included. So, silos are huge. And it's not just in IT. It's not just in the business. It's across the board. So, and that itself is part of a disruption, too, that, companies have to get past. And I know that there's a good friend of mine who works across the street. He's a CTO. One of the things that they're fighting right now is they're bringing in an actual CDO and their own department. Now, in some cases, everybody says that's great, let them handle all the work. Well, naturally, you bring in a whole new department. What does your current IT department do? They hide under their desks because they're not going to want to play nice. So, it is a personnel issue, but it's also part of how do you enable and get people to come to the table through technology enablement and understanding what the business wants so that everybody's understanding the full picture. And that's really the biggest piece. As long as people can see where the company is going and where we are now, and they feel like they can put their voice into what their dynamics are, they can force change or they can help enable change. And that's what's really needed.
Yeah, I like the idea of coming to the table. I think that's so important to working on silos. It's funny, I had a CIO one time tell me that he thought that it was accounting was responsible for silos because they like to break things into pieces. I don't know if that's true, but it is interesting.
I hear it here too.
Yeah. So before moving to Pedro, I just want to let everybody who's on the webinar today know that they can submit questions into the question box, and we would love to answer a couple of your questions as we get to the end of the questions that we've prepared. So Pedro, what do you think?
Yeah, silos definitely are a big issue. And our challenge specifically is that IT can actually be part of creating those silos. When a customer comes in and tries to, they have a business need, and unfortunately, we don't have limited resources available to us, and we have to prioritize based on the strategic objectives that have been set for the organization, but they may have an immediate need, and they end up going out and finding a solution, right? And it could be a solution that they build using tools available to them already, or the bigger problem of shadow IT. So the way that I personally try to mitigate those whenever possible is I try not to say no, but instead try to, if I don't have the resources to help directly, is either try to bring in someone or facilitate a partner that can work through the problem, but while maintaining, a level of governance within corporate IT. Because what I've seen is that the reason we end up, at least at Basic Energy Services, with so many silos has been when IT has said no, yet the business went out and found a solution to the problem anyways. And then we have that silo business process or silo set of data that we need to integrate to later on that becomes extra challenging. And then, of course, cybersecurity is kind of like the big overarching problem that you try to manage with silos, making that very, very difficult because, one of the big pieces of cybersecurity is identify your assets. And if you don't know what you have, you may think you have a reasonable cybersecurity practice, but you don't know what you don't know. And that could lead to a big problem down the road.
So thank you. I think what you've said is absolutely right on. I think it's really important. So I have one more question prepared for you all, and it has to do with how does your organization use new technologies to create, better IT systems, better workflows, things like that. And I'm going to start this one with Anthony.
Oh, put me on the hot spot. Well, we're kind of in the middle of a transition on our own. Some of the technologies that we use right now have been around on the market for a while. A lot of the things that we're like dipping our toes into, like I said earlier, is a lot of APIs. How can we make something do something else better and faster to give us more money? It's effectively the conversation that happens around the table all the time. If we buy this, can we make this do that faster? Whether it's onboarding to payroll to provisioning an IT laptop to, doing a back charge into our ITM, things like that. So some of the stuff, like even purchasing a new product for an enterprise architecture repository, when it comes down to the meat and potatoes of it, how can we reuse products? How do we extend products? How do you get the biggest bang out of your buck? So what we use typically is a model that we base off of products. Once we gather the requirements, we look at our own internal capabilities, and then we kind of map out where can these systems intersect? What can we do to maximize our biggest bang for our buck? Now, a lot of times, I'm going to be honest with you, you have projects that say simply deploy this because why? The business said so. And you say, okay, and you deploy, and the business is happy, the customers are happy, but then your product is underutilized. Now, that becomes a problem because now you've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, into a product that has so much more power. Let's use SharePoint as an example. Workflows in SharePoint are typically underutilized at a lot of organizations. The capabilities of that own product in itself to reach out and touch other systems, whether it's Jira and other products, is unbelievable. But it takes understanding what you need and where you can go to really grasp it. So to answer your question, where and how does the organization use new technology to create IT systems and workflows? It's all about understanding your current capabilities and then maximizing those prior to buying new stuff. So, if the company and the organization is all about shiny new toys, then you're never going to really get that maximum benefit because businesses that do the hot sweep and buy don't typically take a look at all the capabilities. If we think at it alone right now, Outlook, how many people on the call now use every single feature, like categorization of emails, auto rules, sending meeting notes into OneNote. You have workflows already available for you. So, again, grabbing those capabilities, maximizing them to give you the biggest benefit. If we were to extend on OneNote alone, you have a category there where you could have every meeting you've ever gone to in one location. So whenever you have an exit strategy or a succession plan, you are now prepared to hand that off, rather than 45 notebooks from 15 years of work. So that's all I've got to say about that. It's definitely about extending your technology and your capabilities to maximize the benefit of the technology you've purchased.
Wow, I never thought of using OneNote in the way you just described it. I've used it before, but never in that way. There was some study that said that 80% of the features in like Word nobody knew even existed. And so it's kind of amazing. One of the things I'm just curious about, whether you're thinking this way too, I ran a discussion a while back with CIOs on low-code technology, and one of the things they said is they thought low-code could be a way to kind of modernize old things like ERP. You just layer something on top of what you're already doing. Are you seeing that in what you're looking at?
Our organization is still in the middle of a transformation for that. Okay. A lot of our stuff is homegrown, so I don't really have much feedback for it. However, working with a lot of other CTOs and CIOs, a lot of the low-code stuff they're doing is in relation to their efforts to containerize to maximize the benefit. So when it comes to low-code, you have a lot of benefits. I mean, it's scalable, really quick, depending on the type of code. So if you're deploying low-code websites and you want to have it deployed in multiple data centers across the nation, containerize the heck out of it and get your bang for the buck, because low-code is easy to work with. It makes it a lot more significant and easy to read. So when you're bringing on developers, no matter their experience level, as long as you've structured it properly, I need to have that caveat there, you've got growth.
Makes sense. So Pedro, when you think about utilizing new technologies to create IT systems and workflows for the future, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, definitely low code comes to mind, and that's in addition to creating solutions for our end users. It's also about empowering those end users to help themselves, and low code has helped do that for us. I know we're supposed to be vendor agnostic, but for internally we're using Power Apps in order to empower certain individuals to create business workflows that ultimately interact with our ERP or other solutions or other systems like our HCM system. So it's a way for us to solve business problems very quickly. Now, of course, from a governance perspective, I was reading an article about RPA this morning that described doing one RPA process, building one robot is easy. Deploying enterprise-wide robots is extremely difficult because when you start thinking about reusable to where you're not building end-to-end solutions all the time, or when you start talking about governance or security, those are the very difficult questions to answer that take time. So it's a bit of a I think every organization is different, but for us, empowering our certain users to leverage low-code technology in order to solve certain business challenges themselves, while providing APIs that they can interact with through, microservices or Boomi, for example, has helped us say yes more often than no. And really, from a resourcing perspective, one of my biggest challenges is hiring people. And I think that everyone that I talk to in my geographic area has the same challenge. So low code empowers us to perhaps hire differently. You no longer need to go out and hire a full-fledged .NET developer or a Java developer. What you're looking for is not an individual that has technical skills, but is also able, or what's more importantly, is able to directly talk to the business and identify needs and ideate solutions. So for us, it's a paradigm shift both in what we do, but also how we staff ourselves.
No, that's great. It's great to hear that, what you're thinking kind of aligns to some of the stuff I presented earlier. We're in baseball season, so, it's time to hire utility infielders or outfielders who can do multiple things rather than just specialists. So I hear that a lot from CIOs, so it makes sense. Okay, and then let's go to Shreyosi. What's your take on this as well? What are you seeing from your side?
Right. I think like all of our processes are trying to really use different technologies in the different workforce. So, for example, we have onboarding, benefits, payroll. These are like direct people-heavy or employee-heavy processes that use a lot of new technologies. But to an earlier point, I think the emphasis for us has also been to really take a stop and really assess the existing capabilities of technologies already in use, and also in favor of low-code technologies. I think, like Pedro said, you don't really have to worry about training someone in technology or hiring someone with a higher level of skill in certain technologies. I guess that has really helped, like low-code technologies have really helped having more buy-in from different stakeholders of the system to increase efficiency as they, and to try to make the system more accessible and the processes more efficient and effective. Sorry.
I think I've got a page full of notes from everything you said, all of you. I think, obviously, things that I walked away was finding the gaps, looking at building more agility, and then the impact on the business. So that all works for them. I have now asked Maria to share with us the Q&A so we can begin that phase of this.
Thank you, Miles, and to the panelists for doing a great job. We're now going to review some of the questions that were submitted by the audience during the discussion. And the first question is, has your organization started implementing RPA, robotics process automation? If so, what are the benefits? What has it brought along?
Pedro, you mentioned it, so we should probably start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Miles. So we have. I've used RPA in two very specific use cases. One of them actually had nothing to do with what RPA was originally intended to be used for, or at least in my mind, right? We had an integration problem. And at the time, we were using an ERP that had a set of APIs. However, none of the APIs could do what we needed to do. We were essentially applying cache from our customers. And the way that we were applying cache in this specific situation was a little quirky, and there wasn't a direct API from our ERP that we could use. And the cost of developing that code inside of the ERP was a lot higher than implementing a robot that emulated a user doing that business process in the UI. So we implemented RPA in order to not have to implement a custom integration. So we did it quicker and cheaper by doing so. So we kind of that was kind of like we got into RPA, not thinking about RPA, but thinking about how can we do an integration faster and cheaper, given the constraints that we had around the ERP at the time. And then more recently, we automated our AP, or I would say we're in the process of automating our AP using RPA. So the robot picks up invoices from a mailbox where customers are submitting or vendors are submitting invoices. And we also scan into if we receive a paper invoice. It's OCRing that document, checking our ERP to see, to make sure it's a valid vendor, to make sure that, if there's a PO reference that the PO matches what the invoice says, and then ultimately either goes ahead and matches the invoice to the PO and approves for payment automatically, or it routes for approval if it's not a non-PO invoice. So we have, those are kind of like our two big use cases for RPA.
Yeah, one question for you, just because you've done it. I've been reading recently that of all of the things that we bundle under artificial intelligence, that RPA has just got, you know, a quick and big success rate for organizations. Is that kind of your belief?
Yes, I think because it's so easy to deploy. You know, when I think of RPA, you know, I kind of think 15, 20 years back of the times of screen scraping and things like that. So, yeah. So when I think of the modern RPA is, you know, or screen scraping and macros, right? When I think of the modern RPA, they've done a very good job at creating an application, right? Like we use Word as an application or Outlook as an application. Now we can start using RPA as an application. So we essentially can, you know, open up our RPA tool, and if we have a user that is, you know, performing repetitive tasks based on some, you know, specific data that is being inputted, you know, we can very easily automate that. So you can get tremendous quick wins with RPA. In our list of quick wins are, you know, AP automation, bank reconciliation, cash application. Those are the low brain, if I want to say that. Like, you don't have to really think about it very hard. It's fairly repetitive, and you can, you know, follow a given set of rules. You know, as you think about AI and RPA, I don't have experience of that on that, but my experiences with machine learning is that it is quite costly to develop a machine learning algorithm that equates to the human decision-making process. So if you can break down those decisions into smaller little chunks, bite-sized nuggets, then those become a lot easier. So, you know, when we think about, you know, process automation, whether it be on a pure RPA or, you know, what I mentioned earlier on trying to automate business decisions based on data, we always trying to spin it down to the lowest common denominator so that our algorithms are as simple as possible, simply because we don't have the resources or the data history to build large-scale, complex methods.
Makes sense. Anthony, if you experimented at all with RPA, or is it on the agenda for you at some point?
Well, it's an ongoing thing. Like, our development team is actively exploring it, some of the stuff they're doing in Azure Ops. But when it comes to kind of doing the RPA, our organization is actively striving to get there. And one of the things that our business has said is, and like I said earlier, we want to do this because it does this to make us better. And it's like, well, why? So, I mean, some of the things that we've done is we've leveraged existing technologies, like I said, that aren't necessarily classified as RPA, but they have mitigated, like with our ERP, like he had mentioned earlier, pulling data out, presenting it to the user, and simulating the tasks that they're going to do. One of the things that was a benefit to that, you know, utilizing existing workflow tools, was that we minimized our amount of call volume. We minimized the amount of follow-up. We minimize the amount of time it takes for customer service reps to reach back out. So, I mean, it's simple things like that that adds, you know, time back to the employees so that they can focus on other tasks. Whenever they completed that, the amount of money that they were saving just by simple, you know, process improvements that relate to workflows or RPA, it's phenomenal. But it's one of those things like, you know, everybody has a need. It's just a matter of, does everybody have the same need at the same time that does the same thing? And if not, you better get ready to map it out, because it's going to take a minute. But it is something that I actively am learning more about every single day, and it's something that our organization is in the process of adopting for the business. Well, actually, it's one of our CIOs or CAO that brought it up, that they had a demand for it because they were tired of pushing buttons here and there. It's the same repetitive process, or even, you know, pulling logs at the end of the month. Nobody wants to do that. A scheduled task on a box can't do that, but we certainly can walk through all the workflows and provide that to the users and the employees or customers. So.
And Shiroshi, are you seeing application for automating a lot of the harder HR tasks? I know that I was having a problem a few years ago with my company that I couldn't get vacation numbers in the system because it was broken for me. But are you seeing anything here in terms of the HR side of things?
Absolutely. So we obviously we use a lot of RPA and HR-based automation in a variety of our tasks. So, for example, in sourcing the candidates, like going through the talent acquisition, the entire process of talent acquisition, to also understanding turnover and to really get an overall idea of the employee experience. At McGraw-Hill, we are experimenting a lot with machine learning for HR and for the entire employee cycle, so right from acquisition to performance reviews and ratings, engagement, and then finally to turnover, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. So you really experimenting a lot with machine learning to understand whether we have enough data to begin with to really predict turnover, to predict engagement, and things like that.
No, that makes total sense. So, Maria, do we have another question?
Yes, we have time for one more question. It is, many companies have tried digital transformation. Some have succeeded while others have not. How do you define success, and is it different across industries?
Wow, what a great question. I'm going to suggest that we start with Pedro on this one.
Thanks, Miles. That's a very difficult question to answer because I think that it's different for every organization. I think that it's important for the organization to define goals and objectives globally and make sure that your digital transformation strategy fits those larger global strategic initiatives and goals. And without it has nothing to do with technology itself. It has to do with how does your IT strategy fit into the bigger globe of the strategic goals of the organization. So I personally cannot say that is different by industry. I think it's is actually different from organization to organization because each organization is going to be at a different maturity level, and each organization may or may not have different goals and objectives. As an industry, though, you do see trends. So in specific to the industry that I find myself in right now, the big trend is data. Everybody wants more data in order to eliminate costs from the equation. With $50 to $60 oil, everyone up and down the supply chain is looking to do things as efficiently as possible, and they're relying on as much on data in order to make those decisions, not only internally to each organization, but also up and down the chain. So we are requesting more data from our vendors so that we can hold them accountable and make better decisions around vendor selection. And our customers are requesting more data from us to do the same to us. So those are the big trends that I'm seeing in the oil and gas with regards to digital transformations.
And now let's move to Shiroshi.
So yeah, I think from, and I'm speaking purely from an employee perspective or a people perspective, I think, I believe it was Dell Technologies that published a report which spoke about how 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030 aren't even around yet. So really thinking about success and thinking about the future and being future ready and prepared for digital disruption, I think starts with empowering your employees, and breaking down silos and bringing in technologies to really help the different processes and the different perspectives within an organization. And if we are able to do this, then we're definitely starting or heading towards success, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing when you think about it, just how much has changed and how much will continue to change. The pace is just increasing. So that's absolutely correct. And then let's see. Let's end with Anthony.
I think it comes down to how you define success. I mean, we can say we were successful at riding our bike because we went down the end of the street, but did you fall? Did you have to put on a helmet? Success is really a hard word to define when it comes to digital transformation because, I mean, it's an iterative thing that's part of a continuous improvement, which we all see in ITIL or whatever framework you choose to use. So, I mean, some have succeeded while others haven't, yes, but also what extent? What was the goal? Was it to instantiate a department? Was it to instantiate making people mobile? You know, I think that the measurement of success definitely differs from organization to organization and is indicative of what the strives were. So, I mean, in our organization, have we been successful yet? No. Our company is still working at it. And a lot of organizations will say the same thing because it's definitely one of those things that you have to strive and you have to work hard to get to where you want to be. And as long as you're in the same path and you're walking on the same road with the business as IT, then you're going to make it there. It's just a matter of how long.
No, that makes sense. Any final things, Pedro, that you'd add?
No, I mean, I agree with Anthony. Defining success is key. And also the people aspect is tremendous. When you think about people, process, technology, in our case, people, are truck drivers, are pumpers, and people that are not used to technology on their day-to-day basis. Now, Facebook and Instagram are definitely helping with that because most people now have a smartphone for those purposes. But how do we change management around people is usually a much bigger challenge than implementing the technology or changing the process.
Well, I want to thank Shiroshi, Pedro, and Anthony for participating today. I think we've had a great discussion here. I think there's lots of food for thought here. And, look forward to, seeing any, thoughts that you have following the event. But thank you, everyone, for coming to this event. And do we have any final remarks from you, Maria?
Yes. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today and for this fantastic virtual event. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, panelists. And thank you, audience.